is Endrian, founder of AtoZ Communications, and this is the Brand Stories podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to marketing, public relations, and communications in general. This week, we're discussing speaking up on stage. We have Dr. Mary Carlson, founder of Financial Behavior Keynote Group, who discusses all the different kinds of speeches, who belongs having a speaking agent, and even understanding your niche and why that's very important. We connected with each other, it feels like earlier this year, and I am so glad that I've gotten to know this area, because Lord only knows I've pitched people to speak on stages, but getting to understand speakers agencies and speakers bureaus and whatnot, you have fully educated me on everything that I know. So thank you for all of that.
Well, I don't know about fully, because I feel like I am learning as we go. So I am glad that I've been able to help. And it's been a fun journey. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, of course. Thank you. So first question is, what is your favorite brand and why?
Well, actually, I am not a big brand person. In fact, I kind of laugh. There's this joke that goes around that says, I've seen it on social media somewhere. One day I will not buy my clothes in the same place I buy my groceries. That's called mom life right now. And that's just kind of where you're at, of like trying to do it all in. So I would have a hard time being a brand person and shopping at Costco at the same time. But yeah, Costco is definitely high on my list. And I would say one of the brands that I think I have found to be iconic and very good with labeling their brand is actually the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have a very clear brand, and it's very coordinated on time, how they do it and exact. So it's something that I've just kind of watched over time and seen their resurgence, whether it's in Times Square during Christmas or on their videos or all the rest of learning a lot about brands. But yeah, as a non-brand person, that's where I look to you and others that really know more about branding.
That's a totally valid answer. And if it makes you feel any better, recently on a pseudo vacation, I bought leggings at CVS. And similarly, it was like, wow, these are pretty darn good leggings. Like, why am I going anywhere else if I could just go to the drugstore?
Right. No, yeah. That point of like, I've never been a brand person. I will be interested. I'm about to have teenagers here in a couple of years. And so my branding may be upscaled quite a bit, because I hear that becomes a big deal in those teenage years about brands. So right now it's whatever, but we'll see if that changes soon.
Yeah. Well, best of luck with that either way.
Thanks.
So speakers agency, speakers bureau, how did you get started being the speaker guru, I will say?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'll kind of back up and talk a little bit about my history. Is I started speaking really intently when I went to the Pentagon. I've always remembered, even in church and other places, getting up and talking and loving it. I've always enjoyed being in front of people speaking. I would die if you stuck me in a play. I am not an actress at any sort. In fact, I run from those roles. So it's interesting that I'm fine with speaking, but not any kind of acting. But I went to the Pentagon. This would have been really 2008, 2010 timeframe. So think, if we go back, that's the global war on terror. There is lots happening with deployments and people going overseas. And one of my main positions there was to do these, what they called DoD roadshows. So we would go all over the world, went to Korea, Japan, Alaska in January, freezing. And I would present on the financial benefits for soldiers and military. In fact, I got so good that they actually gave me TAP, which is the transitioning out of the military. Mind you, I had no experience in the military at all. So I didn't know what it meant to get in or get out of the military, but I was presenting on it. And I did that for several years and loved it and got rave reviews and just kind of was like, there's something here. So fast forward, I went and got my PhD, spent some time at both state or local and then federal level of government work, and just found myself doing speeches and being asked to do more speeches. Well, 10 years down the road, I realized we were in a mastermind with 3 other speakers / friends of mine that were all in academia. And I said, hey, what do you guys want to do more of? And everybody said speaking and consulting. And I said, let's do it together. So that's really where the whole basis of Financial Behavior Keynote Group came up. In fact, I remember us thinking of what are we going to call this group? And it was like, oh, financial behavior, because that's really where we were born out of. And really what we love, that's our passion, is not just teaching about money, but really teaching how money affects relationships. So it started with 4 of us, and we have since grown rapidly and tremendously. And I have learned over time what that means for a speaker bureau versus a speaker agency, which is what I think you were alluding to. So I'll just kind of clarify right there. Bureaus are often thousands of speakers. I think it's very common, like Washington Speakers Bureau is one of the most common, most notorietous, maybe is the right word to use, speaking agencies that curate thousands of speakers. So they're essentially like a matchmaker, and they put a speaker and a group together and say, hey, it's a fit, and they work 100% off commissions, versus a speaker agent has a much smaller list. It's a curated, very specific list that works individually, kind of like a PR rep would, where you're working individually with that individual to get them a higher status, and works really for the speaker, both inbound and outbound opportunities, experiences. So I am more in that speaker agent camp versus speaker bureau camp. I've loved working with the people that I work with. I've been able to work with some really top name individuals, but not just name, because again, that's brand, right? But just good people that I have really learned a lot from, and think there's wisdom to be shared there.
Yeah, and there is a lot. So anybody, if you aren't already aware of Financial Behavior Keynote Group, you should be checking out their website. You should check out their speakers. They're pretty dang fabulous. But so how do people know that they should be coming to you for speaking? Because I feel like it's similar to like PR and marketing, where some people just say like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to like send something to a reporter. And you're like, well, that's lovely, but do you know them? And did you know how to do it? And how is it that somebody knows that they shouldn't just reach out to a conference versus use somebody like you?
Well, we all see it. Calls for speakers is kind of like a call for a reporter. Anybody can respond to that, and they do. And sure, have we done that before? We've sent in a few. Do they really come to fruition? Not really. Not often, even for some top name speakers, because it's an unknown quantity. And so that's where I think this business is so built on relationships. Otherwise, AI would quantify this in a heartbeat, right? If it's just simple matchmaking, any machine could do that. But I think really what builds here is it's the relationships and knowing, and I'll give you a quick example. We just had a speaker a couple of weeks ago that had something come up that couldn't do a webinar. And this was for a national association group. And we had committed to this 4 months ago, and something in his personal life had just happened and he couldn't fulfill that commitment. And so within 24 hours, I had a new speaker in that same replacement, same genre even, and was able to put her up as the alternative speaker. And I just got off the call this morning with the event planner who just sung rave reviews about this replacement. And so I think that's one of the advantages from an event planner perspective of working with a speaker agent, is being able to say, I'm not just going to give you a replacement. I am actually going to replace that at the same level or higher of what I was committed to. And so that is something I think from an event planner, we've all been there where people haven't shown up or planes don't land or whatever happens in life, versus working with the individual speaker. You get to be able to put in place something else. Now, from the perspective of a speaker working with an agent or a bureau, I think that very much depends on where the speaker is at and what they're looking to get out of that relationship, because it is more personalized and high touch, but it's also longer term and sometimes less cost effective for you, where you can make more just doing it yourself. So there's definitely the DIY, the bureau, and the agent.
I mean, there's also, to be honest, in marketing and PR. So we're similar in that respect, which I will totally take. Have you discovered any talent? Have you been able to spot anybody, whether it's they just didn't realize that they had something that they wanted to speak about and you kind of quantified that? Or how do you explain to somebody like, no, actually, you ought to be doing this. I don't know why you're not doing it already.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'll give you a quick example. Michael Thomas. I remember hearing him speak the very first time I was at an AFCPE conference, and he got off the stage and I walked up to him and said, I don't know you, but I want to ride your tailwind the whole way, because he was just incredible. He was such a good speaker. And it's been interesting because I work with Michael exclusively. It's been interesting to watch his cultivation over time and him being in front of stages. In fact, one of his most recent one was in front of the entire DoD at their annual conference. And so here he is in a room full of military, which are not known for being soft. They will tell you straight up what they think. And so it kind of threw him into a bed of sharks, and he came out with a standing ovation. And I just love watching the development of both the speaker speaker and the reception of the audience and the event planner along the way, is because it just has been a way to see this and say the work is done. The other thing, Allie, that I have realized, and one of the things we have done inside of our group, is there needs to be a space for cultivation. There needs to be a place. A lot of times when working with agents, you've got to be charging a speaker fee of $10,000 to $20,000 or more per speech and getting minimum a dozen of those a year. And so it really requires a higher level. But I look back and I was like, no one ever taught me how to speak. Sure, you can take a public speaking class, but there's no like, this is the way to become a speaker. And so we started and created a community. And that's what happens inside of our community, is the ability to cultivate those who are interested in it or who might have a talent in it, or maybe who are in that lower range category and saying, I want to do more of this, I just don't know how. And so that's what happens inside our community. And we'd welcome anyone that's interested or wants to observe to jump on in and be a part of that.
Love it. And I love the fact that you're teaching people how to do that, because you're right. I mean, I've never taken a public speaking class. Actually, I kind of wish that I had, because teaching academically, same thing. You get in front of people and the first time and then a few weeks in, everything's great and whatnot. But I give you credit for honing those skills and helping take somebody from here and getting them up there.
And Allie, let me go back, because I think a lot of times people think too, oh, well, you get paid so much just to stand on stage and speak. Anybody can do that. And I think that really when speaking is your craft, that is your product, because there are multiple reasons people speak. A lot of time it has to do with marketing. They're marketing another product or they're selling you another service. That's not keynote speaking. Keynote speaking, that is your product. So you're not there to sell a book. You're not there to sell consulting services. You're not there to do anything but present the topic that it's yours and yours alone to deliver. And so that's also what ranges that few hundred to a few $1,000s into that keynote spot. And there is a difference. And we've all heard them. You've been at enough conferences. You've heard enough inspirational speakers to know the difference between, oh yeah, that was good, to that knocked my socks off and that was amazing. And that's really what you're going for as a keynote speaker, is to be able to change someone within. It went to Heroic Public Speaking a few years back, and they have a saying that I just love that I think is very applicable here. And it says, a speech has the power to change the world and the people in it, including you. To me, that's Martin Luther King. His I Have a Dream speech literally changed the world. That's what gets me excited about speaking, is you have the power to influence and change not just one, but thousands of people. Now, that's very different than getting up and saying, buy my next product. There's always that ending of it. And so that's, I think, an important distinction to make along the way. But I think there's so much power in the spoken word and how you do that. But it requires practice. It requires repetition. Just like a fine athlete or an academic strength, anything that you do is going to require that level of excellence. And so that's the part you're seeing behind, that you're not seeing behind the scenes. You see the 1 hour final product, but the hours of work that went into it. Just like a play, you know, if you go to Hamlet and pay a few $100 or $1,000 or more for a ticket, you're going to get that level of quality. And that's the same thing you're getting here.
Yeah, I love that. It must then feel very rewarding to have your speakers in particular delivering those speeches. So how does it feel then hearing the things like the standing ovation and other ways that you've just seen people literally they're helping change their community and their world?
I think that really goes back to the teacher inside of me, just loving teaching, having come from teaching, still doing teaching. There's just something that says, I want to help change other people and do it from the outside in. I think what really set this whole journey afloat was I just didn't want it for me. If I had wanted it for me, I would have hung out my own shingle and put speaker at the end of it. That's great. I remember being in my master's program and coming to Washington, D.C., thinking I need to teach everyone in the world what I just learned in my 2 years master's program at Texas Tech. I was just blown away with how important it is to learn that personal finance basics for everyone. So I started on Capitol Hill here, knocking on doors, going door to door. And it's so interesting because I look back now 20 plus years ago and think, I was on the right track, but my trajectory has not just taken a DC or US perspective. Now we're able to influence and change the world. And that's what I love about what we talk about is it matters to everyone. Everyone is touched in some way, shape, or form by money or bartering or compensation or lack thereof. I don't care what country you're in. And that's the cool part with my speakers as well. And what we do is we're not telling you how to backdoor, Roth, convert anything. We are really focused on how money affects you, how it affects your relationships, where that idea came from. And so we can speak both to the financial service provider and help them recognize and see things through clients or even themselves, their own biases that they don't see inherently, as well as to the consumer or to the general population to help them with their relationship with money. So it's really taken on a much more global perspective and covered a lot more territory than I ever envisioned when I set out knocking doors to begin with.
Good for you. I give you a lot of credit.
Thanks. It's been a fun journey.
Speak of those kind of audiences, how much do they vary from, is Department of Defense for you random happenstance, or should people expect everything from the standard trade industry conference to Davos or something like that?
So what should speakers that work with me expect in terms of?
Well, where have you been able to place your speakers? Where are some of like the career highlights for you?
Yeah, DoD, we've been able to do CIA, NSA. We've been doing a lot of government, but we've also been able to do some really cool corporate clients, lots of brands, right? JP Morgan Chase, Vanguard, like a lot of brands that people would recognize. To me, it's less about the brand and it's more about who is this getting to? And I think that's the most important part. You can go to our website. In fact, we're coming out with a new website that I'm super excited about, and that will be right at the top. So you can go through and look at all the brands and the logos and the rest of it. But to me, at the end of the day, who do we talk to? I would say far and large, we all grew out of financial services. So that is our main line. But more and more, we've been reaching out and really have been asked by human resource departments, marketing departments, even individual. I just spoke last month at a mom's conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and have been asked to come back every year for that. And so it's been cool to see how it's less about the brand that I'm doing it for, and it's more about the impact and the difference it's making on the ground. And it's cool to see, I just kind of reflecting back even on that mom's conference I just completed, I didn't have any services to sell. There was nothing other than my small speaking fee that I was getting from that. And it was more about the impact that I made on those individual lives. And we talked about some hard things. There were some tears in the audience that came out. And I thought, you know what, though? This isn't just changing the people in the room. This is changing the generation of people to come thereafter. Because that speech, we talked about not just what you grew up around money, but what it looks like for your children and how that impacts the future generation. So that's where I think, to me, that's what I care more about is the impact that we're having and the lives that we're changing, regardless of whatever brand or logo that it's under.
Yes, absolutely. So anybody listening to this, what would you say is sort of like your ideal candidate, or who would even be kind of like a stretch candidate who should maybe start thinking about working with you?
Well, I'd say anybody who wants to do speaking, come join our community. If you're curious and want to learn more, that is the first place to start. For me specifically, if you're looking at working with me as your agent, I would anticipate you're doing, as I mentioned before, $10,000 to $20,000 speeches, at least 5 to 10 times a year, and then on up from that. That really is where we would hone in best, because we're helping manage logistics and contracts and negotiate much higher level things. Whereas if it's a do-it-yourself type approach, come join the community. And in that case, we'd love to have you be a part of it. I find there's a lot of synergy. Something else I learned at Heroic that I think is wise is speakers get speakers gigs. And I'll say that one more time. Speakers get speakers gigs, because if you're up on stage and they loved you, that event planner is going to come back and ask for more. So you networking and having a network and contact of other speakers that are doing similar things as you is a great place to do it. And so I'd say come join the community, be a part of it. And that's kind of where we take our farm league look as well. And we pull over those that are in that range. So that was where to start.
Have you ever helped anybody who says, look, I have a face for radio, or otherwise say, I have no business being up on stage? What would you say to that person about maybe that is true, but maybe it's also not true?
Oh, you know what? That reminds me of an individual inside the community right now. He's a podcaster and he loves doing it. He's very happy doing it, and he loves being behind the screen and behind the microphone, but he does not want to be up on that stage. And so I've asked him, he's been with us for quite a while now since our inception. And I've said, hey, what's kept you here? Because we really are focused much more on speaking. And he said, you know what? This community is so full of incredible, interesting people, and we have interesting discussions inside, that he's like, I don't really have a huge desire to get up on stage. And I've even offer a mastermind that talks about, it's called the Referable Speaker, based off the book. And it's really meant to be, how do you get good keynotes and how do you repeat that process again and again? And in that, we distinguish the difference between a keynote, a breakout, a workshop, a webinar, and how those are different and what you need to be doing to do it. And I've had several speakers walk and say, oh, I don't think I want to be a keynote. I'm very happy as a breakout. And that's great. Yeah. But you need to know that. You need to know where that is and where that lies. I think often, and I've even found myself guilty of this, as you try to be all things to all people, yes, you burn out and you wear out and you become nothing to anyone. And so it's really important to niche in and market. And that's what I'm learning along the way, Allie. In fact, you've helped me do some of that, of knowing how to brand more and how to market and niche in that section. And so I think that's something too, as you are doing it, come try it out, come learn in the community, figure out what you like, what you don't like, where you want to be. And you may not even need a speaking agent. You may not need a speaker's bureau. I think there's a fallacy that gets passed around of, oh, if I just was on a speaker's bureau website, or if I was just a speaker agent, then I could charge X amount. Then I could do all these amazing things. Not true. And I find that that's very true even in representing people. If you don't already have that flywheel effect going, there's no magic here. It's just going to be I can propel you to the next level, but if there is no level to be propelled to, that's going to kind of come from you. And so I think that's why we've created that community space, is to give you that time and that space and that effort to say, hey, and we'll throw, sometimes there'll be free speaking opportunities. There will be opportunities to have media pitches and things like that say, hey, give it a shot, see if it works, see what sticks, and kind of give that practice session where you aren't in the spotlight, melting under the heat of the spotlight, that it gives you some time to figure that out.
Yeah. So you mentioned a word that I really picked up on, webinars. It seems like a lot of people are jumping on that bandwagon the same way that they're jumping on podcasts and things like that. Do you feel like if somebody wants to either start webinars or hone in their webinars, should they be part of the community? Is there like another way to be good at that?
So really good question. And I'm really glad you asked it, because I just had a conversation with my marketing person this morning. And I got on the webinar idea about 3 years ago. I was standing on a stage here in DC at an FPA conference. And I thought, you know what I just impacted 100 people in the room. But what if I took that message out and expanded it to thousands, right? And that's called the whole concept of a webinar on demand or whatever else. So for us, that was my initial vision is, well, let's just democratize it. Let's take it out, charge much less, and then it'll come. For us, we did not see that working. And in fact, my marketing lead today came back to me and said, because we've been trying to figure out that webinar world as well. And for us, that is not a lead that we continue to follow. She actually said that on average, 40% of all people who register for webinars don't even show up to them.
Yep.
So I find that it's a lot of work without a huge payout. And that's something that I would definitely turn to someone more with a marketing and a PR background of, how do I improve that rate? So for our world, we really honed in on the CEU side of it, the education kind of platform idea, thinking, well, everyone's got to get their CE. And that is a very crowded marketplace. And so I would say too, as you're thinking through webinars, you already have a niche clientele. If it's for your clients, that's a whole different conversation. Then if you're just shooting into the universe saying, well, I'm going to put this CEU up, or even just this webinar up and hope someone sees it. Well, yeah, you and 2 billion other people on YouTube, And so while it's sure you can give it a shot, but you're going to get like 100 views and pat yourself on the back and say, good job. So I think it's I've learned through my own trial and error that you really need to have that niche in mind and either have it yourself or want to grow that specific niche and speak to them and make sure that you're always meeting those needs and find out, do you have competitors? Because we walked into what I didn't realize was already a very crowded marketplace. And then I realized I don't want to split my time here. I am more focused on stages, not on webinars. And so knowing the difference between that and knowing, is this really going to make a difference for my business in the long run? I think that's a better question to ask up front rather than going through what my dad called the school of hard knocks. And we've all been there. And that's how we learn.
Absolutely. I feel like, and you alluded to this earlier with AI and whatnot, it's interesting that it feels like in this more technological world that the in-person speeches are really dominating because people are looking for that one-to-one connection. And then obviously that's en masse. Do you feel like that's going to be continuing moving forward? Do you feel like there's a strength coming for speeches?
All right, you ready for this? It depends.
How financial advisor of you?
Everything depends. If we were talking 5 years ago, guess what? Webinars were the up and coming thing because it was the only thing. And so I think it really depends on the economy, on the marketplace, on your niche, on who the people you are that you're speaking to or with or about. And so it really, again, and I'm learning this through the School of Hard Knocks, it really matters that you know your niche. And I would say that's true for speakers coming for representation. If you don't know what you speak on and you speak to all people, it is not a right fit. Because if you know who you speak to and are very tightened and pulled in on that, and they're receptive to it, then you've got that flywheel effect coming. I think so many of us try to throw spaghetti on the wall and hope something sticks versus being really intentional about who that audience is. And so, yes, if your focus, and I would say like, oh yeah, my focus is financial services. Well, yeah, that's a huge, one of the things we talk about in the speaker mastermind group is that's a referral tree. Like the entire tree is financial services. And if you go along each branch, insurance is a branch and real estate is a branch and retirement is a branch. And then off every single branch, there are limbs, CFP board, FPA, and they get even smaller and smaller because you're really talking about large segments. So I would say, as you're thinking through this, don't just say financial services. Yeah, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's like saying the real estate market or even a limb off that is so large that you really want to hone in and know who that audience is at the end of the day. It'd be like a financial planner who's wanting to talk directly to clients. Well, who? Don't say retirees. That is going to be a third of the population. And so really knowing that, I think, is the most important thing. And then knowing where they meet and how they receive that information. And then again, it goes back to relationships. Who do you know that has the contact to be able to get that lead in that space? So it's a lot of like stepping back for a second. I think a lot of us sit on that treadmill and just go as fast as we can, just thinking the more I do, the better it'll be. And often it's not that at all. In fact, all that does is burn you out. And stepping off of it and looking more globally and saying, where do I want to be on this tree? How do I get there? And then planning that way versus going the other. The second part that I do want to add in here is if you call yourself an expert, like I remember if I'm a serial entrepreneur and about, I guess 10 years ago now, after my first daughter was born, I was like, I'm going to start a website and share all this knowledge with everyone and everyone's going to listen because I'm a doctor. We like to think ourselves as experts. Like I have a PhD in this, or I have a certificate that looks like this. I will tell you, no one cares. Literally, that was the lesson out of that business. Nobody cared. And so if you call yourself expert or I know all this stuff, great. Go to YouTube. Anybody can call themselves an expert. Like what used to be seen as an expert in the 90s is no longer, right? Anybody and everybody can be an expert on everything. And those are called influencers in today's age. But I really see a distinction there between thought leader. And I think a thought leader is not just someone who is wise, but someone who is able to take that information and translate it in a way that people follow, that people want to know more and learn more about. And I've learned a lot of this, honestly, from Carl Richards. I've seen people just reverberate and really see things in a whole new light through Carl and several others. I think of Meg Lertz or Christy Archuleta or some just incredible thinkers, Heather Fortner at Signature FD. There's so many people that I've seen and heard from that are not just experts, but have taken it to a new level and make you think about something differently. An expert tells you what to do. It's kind of like that shitting on people. You should do this. You should do that. Whereas a real thought leader changes the way you think. It's putting on a whole new set of glasses. It's giving you a whole new perspective or a wider perspective of that universe and what comes in it. And so that's really where I think the momentum is behind is people don't just want to be, it's not a how-to. It's not 1, 2, 3 steps. That's a breakout session, by the way. That's a webinar.
Yeah.
If you really want on a keynote stage, you've got to start talking and teaching in a way that's like a Socrates level. It's a, how do you think differently about something? How do you see something in a new light and able to share that in a whole different range to be able to hit everybody in the audience?
And this is why you are such a good speaker, because as you're going, I'm just like, yeah. So you practice what you preach, which I very much appreciate. And I'm so glad that all the people in your group get to benefit from you, and anybody else, if you would like to join, Mary already invited you. So it's on you now. Go do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Allie, for having me. This has been great.
Of course. Thank you.